Hey everyone, so I wanted to share a tip with you on your filtering when you get to this point because it's really helpful. A lot of times when you have the layers of different kinds of filters put together, the pre-filter and your final filter, I use a clothespin to hold them together, and here's why. I do it because when you have a 5-gallon pot of hot syrup at 219 degrees, you don't want to spill it and miss the cone filter. So at times, I usually pour it in with a measuring cup, and then when it gets about half down to about 2.5 gallons, a little easier to manage. Sometimes it'll go like this and go between the layers, and that's a real problem to have to deal with because you want it to filter through as many filters as possible, because if this filter gets clogged, it's going to stop your filtering completely. And unless you've got a spare, you've got to stop and wash. I'm fortunate that I have a double cone filter, and I did that because it was only $75 more for the double cone filter versus the single. So I just use my clothespin. You could use those binder paper clips, but that's going to keep that from folding down and falling in, because once you're pouring, it's hard to stop quick to correct that mistake. So that's my tip for you. Another tip when you're cooking, skim. Skim, skim, skim. All this foam will clog up your filters. And if you can only get about 3 gallons of syrup through a cone before it clogs, with this, you're going to be reducing that to 2.5 and 2 gallons. And you can see this is a 5-gallon pot. I have 3 of these to do today. So in this instance today, a useful tip to know, that pitcher right there is filled full of raw sap. Last night it was raining and snowing and it had dropped down to 19 degrees and it was blowing like crazy. Now we had just had some 50 and 60 degree days, close to 60. I did not want to be out there. It had rained all day and then it was turning to snow. So my syrup actually went a little farther than done. So to correct that, it mellows out the flavor and the density of the syrup by just adding a little bit of raw syrup. Bethany's all excited. She's watching Nature Cat on PBS right now. It's just silliness. So this is my pig bowl. There's plenty of sweetness in this foam. And when that foam gets to really rolling, and you're at 219 degrees, I think it's 7 degrees higher than the boiling temperature of water. So I just skim this as I go, but when it's at the very end, it just foams right up. You can't skim it. You have to get it off the heat right away. So if you're interested in the boiling point of syrup, I have a separate video of that I made last year, and you can look that up. And I believe that's exactly what it's called, the boiling point of maple syrup. Hi everyone, so today we are in the kitchen cleaning up from a batch of maple syrup, and I am cleaning out my filters. So I want to show you what happens with your filters during the process of filtering your syrup, just to show you what is in it before it's filtered. This is my first pre-filter, and I've turned it inside out to clean it. And you don't want to force this back through it. These are reusable to a degree. So I usually put 2 or 3 of these pre-filters together. And then this is the second pre-filter, so you can see it's still pretty clean. It's just got some syrup that's run through it. And what happens is, this is sugar sand. It's like the thickest, it's like apple butter is the best I can describe it, or applesauce. It is really grainy and gritty, and it can vary season to season and tree to tree. Then I'm getting this really heavy sugar sand this year. So what I do is I rinse my filters out in the sink. You don't want to use any kind of cleaner in them, because in your next batch of syrup, it can leave an off flavor. So after I get them all rinsed, I put them here in my dish rack and let them drip into here, and then I transfer them to either the downstairs clothesline in the basement or in the sun, which I prefer to do it in the sun to make sure that they get fully dry. And I actually did a little bit of research for you The final filter is made of a fabric called Orlan, and it's a synthetic fiber. So this final filter is they come in 5-quart or 8-quart. I use the 8-quart, and you can see the yellow line from the syrup going through. This will hold about 3 gallons. I do my syrup finishing on the stove with this 5-gallon pot. It's actually 22 quarts. And I leave a little space at the top for the foam to boil up. And it's a double-walled bottom, so it helps to not have it overheat. And part of this cleanup job is when this is made, you can see that there's this piece that goes all the way around here. A lot of syrup gets left behind in here, and you can't squeeze these because it'll wreck the filter by crushing the fibers together, and basically you can leave permanent damage to it, and then it won't go through. So they're not super cheap. These are super cheap, and these are a synthetic pre-filter, and they're made of the same kind of material, but they're food safe, like interfacing in sewing. So you could probably get away with that. So if you needed to, you could probably make these out of wool. I'm sure that's how they used to be done. And I did a little research, and it says between 3 and 5 gallons can be filtered through one of these before it starts to clog, or through one of these. And that's why you do the layering of the multiple filters together, because if this stops up and you can see all the stuff that was in here, then I just pull the first cone out, pour any syrup into the second cone, and then all that sludge you just stop pouring before it gets into the second filter. I quite often do 3 filters of the pre-filter and then this. So this is the bottom of my syrup tank, and it just sits flat on the counter. But because this is down here in the corner, I always, a helpful hint, I take a couple of books at the back and get it tipped up so I can get that last bit out. And then by hand, I'll just put this last little bit into a small mason jar in the refrigerator instead of messing with canning that, because every time you're canning, you have to reheat it. Last night's batch, I ran out of half-gallon jugs, and I'm at the very end of my plastic jugs. I decided to use my pickle jars, and I've used these before for canning homemade apple juice and homemade grape juice. So there's no pickle smell to them. You don't want that behind. This one, the lid was smelly on it, so I wrote a little note to myself to smell it first, because it can create an off flavor in your syrup. So this one won't get repackaged for resale unless it's tested and proven to not have any smell to it. And after I fill them, you have to lay them down on their sides, and that gets that hot syrup at the top to kill any bacteria. And then I put them back upright. So these are all ready to go into storage. And you can just see, this was a smaller batch that we did this time. It's a much lighter color than usual. We've gotten up, our batch is up to about 450 gallons, and it creates a darker and darker flavored syrup also. I don't like it to be too robust of a flavor. But this is what we've got going on today with the maple syrup. So it's been about 4 weeks of doing maple syrup at this point. We started on February 14th, and it is well past March 14th at this point. We're almost to April. It'll end up being about a 6 or 7 week maple syrup run. We've had a couple days here and there in between where we haven't had to collect sap, so it does help. Last year I was pregnant and I was going up and down a really steep slope, and I got tired of doing that. This year it's just been such a huge year, and our boils have been 3 and 4 day boils. So this was nice to have a smaller boil and just kind of catch up on things. Today I've just been kind of working on editing videos, getting some new videos posted. I'm sure you're about getting as tired of watching all my maple syrup videos as I have been of doing all the work. But we have a big family. It's bigger than it was in previous years, and we use it. We use the syrup ourselves for a lot more, and we'll be doing more online sales. So watch for that. So somebody had notified me that there was a problem with the Etsy store on the shipping, so I'm going in and fixing that. And of course we went to the post office and got a bunch of flat rate and priority shipping boxes. So that syrup is available to you also, and we're going to be selling it in pints and quart containers. I may be able to find a box for the half gallons, but it's just kind of better with shipping to stick with the quart containers and then send you multiples of those if you want to add a higher volume of syrup also. Of course it is post office shipping, so you need to have an address that it can be delivered to. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time. We'll share with you more of our adventures. Bye!